Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to WiserHQ. For those of you thinking, where the hell is Izzy Bishop? Who is this clown? I'm afraid she is ill. My name is Lou. I'm Associate Director of Wiser Elite. We're a specialist textiles recruitment and communities business. That's the day job. My night job is founder of SDRs of London, which is one of our 5 communities, which I assume the majority of you are a part of in some way, shape or form. If you're not, 1, what the hell are you doing? 2, you'll be able to sign up by the little leaflets on your seats. You've got 5 different communities, SDRs, AEs, post-sale, leadership. We would love to have you, so please do sign up. It is completely free. So, with Trumpet, I believe this is our 3rd of sponsored event we've done now. Wiser Elite and Trumpet have become quite the well-oiled machine. We've got 4 fantastic leaders for you here this evening, ready to discuss all things GTM, success stories, challenges, hopefully some tools that you can take away tonight, start implementing in your day-to-day from tomorrow. How tonight is going to run, we're going to have about a 50-minute panel, then there'll be time for 10 minutes of questions. We have got a hard stop at 8 o'clock, I'm afraid, but never fear. We've then got an hour of networking, drinks, pizza, whatever it is that you want to do after that. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to Rory to introduce himself and the rest of the panel.
Clap was a bit overkill, but thank you. I'm Rory, co-founder, CEO of Trumpet. I'm attempting doing the moderating tonight. First time. Izzy has thrown me under the bus, so do my best here. But yeah, really excited to put on this event. Thank you all for joining as well. I think we can all agree there's a lot of like doom and gloom on LinkedIn these days of sales cycles increasing and win rates dropping. So we're very proud to be able to bring together such amazing leaders from, I personally think, kick-ass companies who are killing it in what is a very tough environment. So really keen for you all to have some takeaways, some learnings, some actionable insights from tools and best tips and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, without further ado, we're going to hand over for quick intros.
Sure, thank you. Hi everyone, so I'm Natalie Johnson. Nat will do just fine. And I'm the CRO of a company called AutogenAI, headquartered here out of London. It's my 3rd startup running revenue in technology teams for the last sort of 15, 17 years. AutogenAI is an AI tool, obviously, but specifically for writing bids and proposals for winning work. So yeah, very happy to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Hello, I'm Marina Ayton. So I work for a company called Wiz, slightly less startup now. We're probably at our kind of scale-up phase. I run part of the UK for the business, focusing on kind of major and strategic accounts. I've only been at Wiz for 3 months, but prior to that, I ran the same strategic and majors business for a company called Zscaler, and prior to that, I was at a company called AppDynamics that were then acquired by Cisco. So I've been in a few playbook companies now, so yeah, excited to be here. Oh, and maybe Wiz is basically does cloud security for any company on the planet. We are agnostic to where you are on your cloud journey, what kind of industry you sit in. We kind of serve anyone who's got workloads in the cloud.
My name is Rob Massa. I'm CRO at Juro. I've been with the company now a bit over a year. I spent the last 15 plus years in high growth venture backed startups and scale up, both in New York and London. Previously at MEDDPIC, also was at Forecast, and actually moved over here through Wunderkind, where I moved from New York to London to build out the EMEA function. Supposed to be a 2-year thing, and somehow here I am 7 years later. Don't know how that happened at all. For those of you who don't know, Juro is an intelligent contract automation platform that enables sales and other business teams to self-serve contracting to bridge the gap between legal and the rest of the other business units that use contracts on a daily basis.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the intros, everyone. I think to kick off, I believe that we've come from a world where sales was always pretty tough. We then went through that weird period where software was flying off the shelf, left, right, and centre.
Special times.
The heydays, and like anyone could sell pretty much. But we've now come into this environment where things are tough again, and we're having to go the extra mile for every deal, whether it's a renewal, whether it's net new, whether it's expansion. Like every license is being scrutinised. So Natalie, I'm going to kick off with you because you are big on value selling. So
yes,
tell us more.
Yes. So, so the tool that we're working with at AutogenAI is it's a very, very feature function rich tool, which many tools are, but we're sort of disrupting a space with bid writers and bid managers where they haven't really had technology before to help them do this. And we're just to give some context, we're working with a lot of sort of construction firms, engineering firms, things like that, where they're bidding on a lot of public sector funds to win work. So everybody gets very excited when they see the tool because it can do so much. And I joined the business in January and very quickly realised, we're having these great demos and fantastic stuff happening, and then really losing the ability to see that through to one business and seeing that stuff scale through the pipeline. So really sort of flipping the kind of feature function piece on its head and really focusing at value from the very, very start, from the very initial BDR qualification using PACT framework, right the way then from the initial discovery call with the AE through the process. So we were starting doing it by really trying to build out what is the value that we're actually going to bring right to the start of the conversation. So not your sort of traditional discovery spec and trying to go through all the ins and outs of detail and feel like a bit of a Q&A. Really like, let's kind of give you the idea of what this can do, then what value is that going to bring straight away. So we started to do that, then we found a tool that could help us do it, and it's a tool called Kavana. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. They're also based out of London, Series A funded, and it's a fantastic tool, and it's kind of everything that I believe I've been looking for the last 8 years, because it helps you build that value story right from the start, gives you the ability to build it from a co-collaboration point of view. I'm doing a pitch for Kavana now, I'm just saying. But it has really, really transformed the way that we can start our initial discussions, start those early stages of discovery and focusing on value, and really build out what we call a value hypothesis then, which gives you kind of the ability to not only quantify the ROI, but the cost of inaction and the cost of inertia, which is a big problem in the space that we're selling to. So we've spent a lot of time doing that this last quarter as we've embedded this new tool, and we've seen demonstrably the impact that that's had on our ability to move deals through the pipeline, but ultimately win them out the other end. So that's a really exciting piece that I've been really happy to focus on the last few weeks.
Rob, on your side, I feel like you're also drawn to value selling the space you're in, the buyers you sell to.
Yeah, so we have a very similar story in that our tool can do so much, and it's really hard to just sway the perception of the buyer from like the actual features and functionality to what is the value I'm going to get from the jobs to be done. And so it's actually quite a similar story. We don't use the tooling, but maybe we'll look into it. But what we've actually moved to now is, so previously we used to run a discovery call, and I think one thing I realized over the last 6 months specifically is like every individual moment you have with a buyer is incredibly important, and in order for you to continue the momentum and start the deal off on the right foot, you really need to show value quite quickly. So what we've done is actually retooled that into how do we get to speed to magic moment. So what is the fastest way that we can uncover just one single pain, and then show them how, with a magic moment, how Juro is going to actually solve that. And what that does is it actually sets the stage for the rest of the sales process, because you can just like layer things on as you go. You can continue to do discovery as things go, and the buyer will be way more open with you, knowing that you can actually solve at least one and or more of their pains.
Marina, I don't want to leave you out.
Well, first of all, I do think it's definitely getting harder. My approach to like value selling, and we sell absolutely on value, is that I think it all starts from like obviously pre-first meeting, right? It's about the discovery that you do, the hypothesis that you build, and the prep that you do before you go and meet that initial buyer. And you need to have like an understanding of why that person might have taken a meeting with you in the first place. And I totally agree with you, and everything that you can do in the engagement to have that magic moment and actually re-articulate that back to the customer puts you in a much better position. So whether that's, following up with an email saying, this is what we learned from the meeting today, and if you've got a product that's easily demoable, like, here's a screenshot from our platform that allows you to do this is how easy it is, this is the kind of ROI that you can expect, like integrating stories into it. But I think that any rep in this environment right now, even dependent on your ASP or what you're selling, etc., like, it's no longer acceptable not to have a CFO ready business case, and you need to understand, therefore, in your discovery, like, what is the status quo, what is the current state, what are they spending, what does that time frame look like in terms of tools, when, like, they probably sign contracts for these tools, when can they realistically take them out, etc., and to ask the really difficult questions of the answers that you don't really want the answers for, because you're going to get them at the end of the sales cycle anyway, so you may as well ask them up front, and it puts you in a much better position. But I would say on the value selling stuff, my view in the current economy is over-rotate on the discovery piece, truly understand your customer, and then playing back what you've learned and how your solution fits into that becomes a lot easier. Particularly if you're in early stage companies where you actually have the opportunity to maybe even develop the product alongside some of those customers that might be your early adopters.
Awesome. Who here has written a business case before their team are doing them or they're starting to introduce them?
The joy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I guess open it up to all of you.
I think it's a really interesting point, because it's one of those things where just throughout the cycle of, for lack of a better pun, sales, you see just different trends throughout the industry, no matter what sector or space you're in, of the way that people sell. And then you notice when a buyer kind of latches onto that as something that's somewhat like robotic. And I think a business case is getting to be somewhat of like a good example of that. The reason why I say this is because when I would say probably 1 or 2 years ago, business cases started becoming more apparent, CFOs would look at it and they would probably scrutinize a little less. However, now that they're seeing a business case within every individual vendor that's selling to them, they're scrutinized way more. So I would say, like, make sure that they're like super tight and they're not just saying, oh yeah, we're gonna, the ROI on this is gonna be £2 million, because the reality is, like, that will end up like actually turning your deal sideways if you go too far the other way.
So yeah, I guess with that, what do you think makes up a good business case? Like, what are things that you ask the team to do that you think sets them apart of any other business case that CFO is seeing?
Truly, for us specifically, it has to be specific to the actual pain that you're trying to solve, versus just like a generic, you spent X hours on contracts, for example. X hours of contracts cost you Y, and that's going to result in like Z, both time and money saved. It really needs to be like super specific to the actual job to be done, in order, in my opinion, just to like make a big impact.
Yeah. I think like best practices split it into like 3 key areas, right? Hard savings, which is CFO ready business case. What can you take out, rip out, replace? That's like a number that no one can fight against. It's around dated, like you have contracts that you're basically replacing. The second is soft. Those are number of hours, opportunities to change the way that people operate in your organization, give them hours back for innovation, all of that stuff. And then you have, I personally always put this in business case, future opportunities. Like right now, no one is buying from vendors, they're buying from partners. So what does the future look like for the relationship that you are embarking on? What does the roadmap align to the strategic direction of that company? And how are you mapping it so that in the future, you've also got business value that you can start to draw down on? That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I agree with both. I think just more tactically, like I think it's just important to ensure, like, if your business case is going to end up in the eyes of the CFO, make sure that this is really tight, really cohesive. The last thing you want is if you can, unless you're unless it's really, really required to get into your business case, 15, 10 pages is too much. It's far too much. It's just not going to be read. So keep it really cohesive. I think 1 page, 2 page at best, if you can, be really, really clear, be really prescriptive. I think putting it into those buckets like we've talked about there is so important. It's just got to be really tangible. And the amount of business cases, that you see come out, and I'm like, guys, get it out, all the fluff, get it gone. It's just not required. And if you want the CFO to really take notice, make sure that it's something really tangible they can digest.
Yeah, and have someone that backs up every figure that you've put in it, like from a champion. Like, don't put a figure in there unless you've got someone that CFO said, who told you that number? And you can say, it was this person, and that person's going to say, yep, that is what I put in there.
Very true.
Because I've learned the hard way on that one.
Something that's worked for us is positioning potential numbers as like a good case, a better case, and the best case.
The range.
Yeah, just showing them even at a kind of a low output or a good scenario, there's still value to be had, like significant return, and showing the team that you've spoken to internally, because a lot of times the CFO will go back to the champion and be like, right, who's involved, what have they said, and what do they care about, so kind of showing those internal stakeholders on their side and what they care about. Cool. Rob, you mentioned the word robotic. I know this is something you're passionate about. Is removing the robotic side of sales.
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it just before, but there's this cyclical training that a buyer goes through during a specific period, because one trend happens, people, all sellers latch onto it, and then it just becomes like par for the course when you're buying something. And I think it's more important than ever now to really be more humane when you're selling versus like just only follow your process and stick to your process, because there are instincts that I think now more than ever are going to actually make a bigger difference than previously. Buyers are now used to like a standard sales process. They know exactly what discovery looks like. Then we're going to go on a demo. Then you're going to ask me, what other stakeholders do I need to get in on the next one? And frankly, I think the more you can differentiate yourself from that and be less robotic in that way is actually, we're seeing just much higher win rates from actually giving the AEs a little bit more agility within that process to kind of do a little bit of their own thing.
Where do you find that balance though? Because we all know the power of MEDDPIC and all these frameworks and the value they have. So reps feel this pressure. I've got to ask certain questions. I've got to find out certain information because I go for a deal review. I've had a discovery call. It's not qualified. How do you create that natural seller who's just purely curious and because it's not always.
So we use MEDDPIC. However, we moved to trying to get all the MEDDPIC information up front to spreading it out through different stages of the cycle.
Yeah.
And at this point, we know pretty much what our ICP is. So there's generally, if you find out the important things there's budget, they can afford to pay for it. You have someone senior enough, there's no real need, and obviously there's pain. Going into all the other stuff with the decision-making process, all that kind of stuff can kind of come later as long as you build enough excitement in the beginning. I think if you try to get all that information right now in that first call, you basically make it all about you and nothing about them.
Yeah. So buyers don't like being interrogated.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you earn the right to interrogate people, right?
Exactly.
That's my opinion. I think there's I think about it as slightly differently, but maybe because of the stage of the company that I am working in. I think we view MEDDPIC as a qualification tool, which it's what it is, right? It's a set of questions that you use to qualify where I am in an opportunity and how healthy is my deal. In my opinion, the sales process is something very different, right? And what you layer onto a sales process is, in my opinion, the best reps are the ones that are authentic to themselves, right? They have this unconscious competence of an understanding of how they run a deal and the key penalty moment meetings that you require in order for that deal, when you qualify it in regard to MEDDPIC, that makes it solid, right? Have you met an economic buyer? Do we understand the decision criteria? Are we uniquely positioned to beat the competition? Do we have a CFO ready business case and all of that stuff? But I think when you talk about salespeople being robotic, 100% if you just follow that process right and you just use MEDDPIC and you're like, can I meet your boss because I need to check with him that you have budget for this and I'm really nervous. That obviously is not going to come across in the right way. But I think there's an element once you get a bit, if you get a bit more confident with your sales technique and start to be yourself in front of the customer, I think that there's another layer on top of that, which we call micro moments, right? And those are the things that you do outside the sales process that are the more humane things, like you say, the interactions that you have in water cooler conversations, when you get on site or you meet someone in a coffee shop to say, hey, this is my understanding of your business, I've written it on a piece of paper for you, can we spend 20 minutes and can we just like rip it up because I don't think I've got it right? Those are the moments where you build proper connections and proper champions in your customers, and that's when the authenticity of like each seller comes through. And the people that master that with the qualification tools like MEDDPIC or whatever you use and the sales process, those for me are the best sellers.
I'll borrow your pen. I'll write that down. What about yourself?
I'm not sure I have much to add, to be honest. I think, compared to what Rob said, we've done exactly the same with MEDDPIC, is that we've just spread it out across the process, really kind of made sure that we're not kind of overwhelming with the amount of inputs that have to come in to get through the MEDDPIC qualification, because, some of it just ends up being just so useless.
Yeah.
So, like, cut all of that stuff out. But yeah, completely agree entirely. The best salespeople are gonna be able to bring through their personality, their capability. And I always think just if they're pretty obsessed enough, they're gonna be able to find the right way.
Yeah, agreed.
Just one thing to add there. So we are, I know it's like very old school, but we still heavily use the Challenger. Very, very old school. But we use it because it puts your reps on like the same level as the buyer, and going into like that initial call with like the teaching moment.
Yeah.
Just for us, this actually works really, really well, and also gives you the permission to be on the same level and be able to retrieve the information that you get back.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to chuck a stat out there because I love a stat, but I think Salesforce said about 84% of buyers care as much about the experience as the product. And the experience is how we sell, the energy, how we run the process, like who we introduce when, all these things. I think, increasingly important when I think we're in a world as well where tech is slightly commoditized, like we all have competition, there's feature parity, there's crossover, so sometimes it's the rep, it's the experience, it's all of that really counts. So glad to hear that's what's working for you guys. Marina, how are you slowing down whilst keeping up the pace of growth, but in a sustainable way?
Right, I think we covered quite a lot of this, but I think how are we slowing down? So let me just tell you a little bit about where Wiz is on our journey. We've just surpassed 500 million in annual recurring revenue, and we've been going for the last 4 and a bit years. So we have grown, it's the fastest growing technology company in the world. We are on the track to, NVIDIA, for example, is pretty much grew at the same rate as us. So where we are now, we have 127 customers in the UK. Our biggest problem that we have within our business right now is that we have got there through a load of tailwinds, right? We have an unbelievable product that has great market fit. We have an incredible engineering team, and we have a marketing engine like I've never seen before, right? So with those kind of tailwinds comes luck, timing, all of those good things, and now we have to sustain growth. And as we build up to our IPO, which is very public, so that's why I can talk about it. As we build up to our IPO, the thing that we really care about now is retaining unit price, right? When the market and Wall Street looks at you pre-IPO, they look at a few things, right? One is, how do we retain the unit price? The second is this company capable of selling across multiple different products that sit in their platform? So we just launched our second product last month. We'll launch our third product in 2 weeks' time. And so when I talk about slowing down to speed up, now our biggest job that we have is that we've done the first bit, which is getting the cowbell customers, right? When you're in like a smaller stage startup, you will do anything for a new logo. You want to get the stories. You need to get the customer names on your website, and you need to use that to fast track your growth. We have done that bit. Now we've given it away too cheap, and we need to re-architect the story and say, right, we've got an incredible product that solves a massive number of use cases. How do we build value in all of the new engagements that we do? And then, so slowing down by doing discovery in those. And then in our existing customers, how do we evidence to them that we are giving them way more back than what they've actually paid for, and how are we going to, look at increasing their average spend or whatever it is, or going into other areas of the product. So does that answer the question? I think it's about doing discovery, building value, getting wider across organizations. We're in a very fortunate position where, from a stakeholder standpoint, my teams can engage with like 10, 15, 20, 30 stakeholders, right? And there's such a broad set of capabilities. And then it's about simplifying that into a really easy consumable story that can be taken to a proper economic buyer, like a CIO, CISO, whatever, and asking the difficult questions at the point where we have a good story.
So slowing down is one thing, but I want to open it up to Rob and Natalie. Doing things differently. What do you think your team has done this year in what we kind of all agree is a tough climate that's different to maybe something you've done before that's worked well that you didn't think maybe would have, or?
Yeah, the phone.
Yeah?
Cold call.
So it's not dead?
Genuinely. Honestly, it has been the biggest needle mover for us. So I joined the business in January. This is our kind of second commercial year. This is our first full year as a commercial organisation, and when I joined, we were like, we got to build some pipeline here. We've got to fill the top of the funnel, and I hired my great BDR manager over there, James, and we've built a significant BDR function. We pair our BDRs and AEs one to one. They work in complete collaboration, and it's all been based on cold calling, majoritively. Just good old-fashioned picking up the phone, and also with that, AEs getting out, use your feet, get out and go meet people. Just very back to like traditional stuff that, was happening a decade ago that, I've been blown away really by what we've been able to achieve just through very, very traditional methods this year. So nothing cool and clever and new, just back to what we know works, and it's been phenomenal to see the results.
Have you seen
What have you used to get the phone numbers and stuff like that out of interest?
Cognism, Lusher, Zoom Info. We got all of them, everything. And then obviously Sales Nav and all the rest of it. Yeah.
What about efficiency? Do you use parallel or power dialers or anything like that, or is it?
No, it's just good old-fashioned mobile phones, and we've got a sales loft that helps us, track everything through there, and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's we're not sort of sitting there going, oh my god, you've got to make 200 calls today. We can sort of understand what activity is required to get the results that we need, and yeah, I think we do have the benefit of, I mentioned earlier, we're selling into a market that hasn't really been disrupted by technology before. A lot of these people that we are pitching to, I used to work in MarTech, we couldn't cold call anyone. Nobody wanted to talk to us on the phone, so I think we do have the benefit of a newer market and an ecosystem that really hasn't been disrupted, and people who haven't really been hit heavily by salespeople before. So it's definitely benefiting us.
Yeah, I think
we'll take it while we can.
Yeah. I think the one thing to add to that, I feel like there's this challenge on LinkedIn of like it's one or the other. Like it's email doesn't work, or call calling doesn't work.
It's a combination.
It is a combination. It will always and forever be, because I think what we've seen with SalesLoft and other tools is that creates efficiency. All these AI SDRs, maybe not talk about them, but like by having that efficiency, you can nurture more. I think there's this really like incorrect mindset of I get these leads, I churn through them in 2 weeks, and I move on because they didn't answer. But 35% of buyers are in the market at one time. It's insane that like we're in this mindset of people are just ready to buy and reply to me when I outreach them, rather than how can I nurture, how can I kind of build that cadence. So Yeah. Rob, what about you? What have you done differently in the team?
So our demand is actually quite different. So this is actually you'll get like a opposite view. So right now, about 75% of our pipeline comes inbound, which sounds like it's great. However, there's like many issues with it. And I think some people don't realize it, because everyone I say that to is like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You just have people coming to you. When I first joined about a year ago, the problem is that we were basically entertaining too many of those people, and not, because our call to action is book a demo. So immediately you book a demo, you have an MDR, call you, just, what's the process? They'll ask you the 5 questions or whatever, make sure you're qualified, and they'll put you through. When we actually looked at the data, it was 60% of the demos that were getting booked were basically like total wastes.
Okay.
And the qualification process wasn't good enough to actually filter those out. So we actually looked at the regions, because we're getting demos from all over the world. Most of our demand comes from organic search. So you can't really control that. It's not really a controllable channel. And we determined that there's really only 15 countries that we're closing business in, and we're not closing any business in companies that were less than 10 people. Those 2 buckets of everything else, the under 10s and the aside from those 15 countries, made up 60% of the total demos. So what was happening was the reps were getting all these demos, but they had no time to actually spend on the good ones. So we filtered all those out. We also, and this is going to be somewhat controversial, found that because it's such an inbound motion, you really, and the buyer kind of knows a little bit about what they want and what pain they want to solve. You need more of for the high quality demo bookings, you actually need a little bit more product education to be able to actually handle those. But previously we had MDR centers. We've since now put AEs on those initial calls and are trying to race them to that magic moment, because we know that they're going to go out there and talk to competition. We want to make sure that every single demo that we get that we know is within our wheelhouse and our ICP is being treated super carefully.
Nice. Cool. Thank you for sharing. We've gone through a bit of deal progression and outreach. We're going to move on to NRR. So, Natalie, expansion for next year.
Yes.
Things you're putting in place to make sure your current accounts are healthy and will look to expand.
Yeah, so we've so this year not only have we built the sales organisation, we've obviously built the customer success organisation to support all of that. The key for us now as we look to next year is to really understand from our base accounts which are the ones that are going to be ripe for expansion. So we'll be doing a lot of work as we come to the end of our financial year now, between the customer success owner and the sales owner on each of the key accounts for expansion, just really building out those account plans, working through ascertaining where we can go next. So that'll mean more users, more business units potentially within the organisation, new countries to take our tool into, and really just trying to hit those motions. We've only focused primarily on acquisition this year, being it's been our second year really. So next year we'll apportion quite a bit more into the expansion side of the house, and really working in partnership with customer success to ensure that can happen, and then we can see decent growth numbers from that. Obviously, without taking our eye off the acquisition ball, which still will remain the kind of big focus for us as we move through next year too.
So does sales support with the commercial conversations for expansion?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly right. So
does that work for you guys?
Yeah, it works. I mean, we're not too far into it yet. We'll find out. But that's the way I've run my last 2 organisations and run those revenue teams. Is CS and sales working together to sort of own those commercial conversations, and that not detract from what customer success are trying to do, and ensure that you get the right balance there. But again, all about that co-collaboration. So yes, that's what we're going to be working towards for the new year.
For us, I guess it's like reasonably similar. I think like the things that we're really focused on, especially as our customers haven't been with us, generally speaking, for actually that long, because the UK was the last market. We do 73% of our revenue out of the US, so EMEA is tiny in comparison. So we are growing at like a rate of knots and breaking everything within our way, to be perfectly honest. So our view right now is that as a rep or as a AE, you own the whole customer, right? You own the customer experience, and you are the quarterback for that entire team. Whether it has a CS manager, a renewals manager, technical account manager assigned, something goes wrong with the customer, it's your problem to solve. And I think that mentality is really important, particularly like in startups. It's like the accountability that like, I sold this, so I need to fix it, and I need to make sure that, you know, the customer's being looked after in the right way. Something that we're doing to make sure that, you know, our expand opportunities are better are we're doing business value realization like programs with our customers. So looking at what they've already deployed, what is the value, going back to them in QBRs with, you know, EBs ideally, and saying, did you know, Mr. CIO, over the last month, this is what we've achieved with Wiz. This is the number of people that are logging into your portal. Do you know that, like, for BMW, for example, you know, it's over 1,000 people in their organization are logging into a security cloud platform. Like, it's quite wild to think across so many different areas. So just like bringing that information up to people and normalizing the interaction that we have with customers on a regular basis, so that when we want something, it's not just the first time they've heard from us in 3 months or whatever it is, because we've let them get on with things. It's about having a regular cadence of meetings.
Rob, as a CRO, I feel like NRR is probably top of mind. I think all of us in venture-backed companies, but yeah, how do you guys approach it?
So I'll start with like the setup in terms of how we do sales, CS, AM. So I think it varies depending upon the size of accounts that you have. So for example, enterprise accounts, I would be more inclined to have like a strategic AE remain on the account, given there's, you know, probably they get their set of accounts and have time to filters. We currently are a very much like a high velocity, high volume, 30 to 60 day cycles business that, you know, bring in, you know, we have, you know, thousands of customers. Therefore, like for us, it would be impossible to keep the AEs on those deals because we need them purely focused on just continuously bringing in new. So what we've done is actually we have a CS team that has 2 arms, or 3 arms, I should say. One is what we call our legal engineers, which you can kind of marry to implementation and onboarding. We also have CSMs who are for our mid or tiers 2, 3, and 4s, responsible for renewals and then upsell on renewal. And then we have our account management team. And they're purely focused on expansion and then our much larger renewals. So that's how we've broken it out. But I think it really depends on the size of accounts that you're working. Like, because I've been at businesses that were enterprise where we've not done it that way. We've kept actually like strategic AEs on a lot of the bigger accounts to ensure exactly what like Marina's saying, that like it's their problem to deal with.
And something we touched on when we had the pre-call to today was the consistent messaging across the function.
Yes.
So with sales, CS, account management, how do you ensure that? I feel like the business case is a great opportunity for that, always bringing it front and center. What was the one that you just mentioned, the business value?
Realization.
Yeah, the realization. Like, I guess that's going back to the business case and kind of looking at what was promised and if it's been delivered. But yeah, how do you kind of ensure that consistent messaging?
Yeah, so we did when I first joined Juro, the 3 go-to-market teams were very much siloed. And it's because they kind of had different owners. And because of that, like the value was not being communicated across the entire funnel. So the way marketing was actually presenting us in the market was very different from the way we were selling it, which was very different from the way that we were speaking to customers about the product. So one of the first things we did was ran a sprint on just value narrative across go-to-market teams. where we had a product marketer, our VP of marketing, myself, and some others work in like this 2-week sprint basically of how to actually ensure that everybody's speaking the same language and communicating the same value to the customer. Everywhere from like every entry point of like the marketing funnel through to sales, through to CS. It takes a lot of work, frankly, and like a lot of enablement as well to ensure that that actually is happening. But when it does, you start hearing your customers speak about the product the same way as they're reviewing it when they are actually seeing it out in the market. So it made a major impact, but it was a very, very difficult project that involves multiple stakeholders.
But worth the investment.
Yeah.
Awesome. Marina, you mentioned breaking things earlier, and break fix model, something that Wiz has adopted. Do you want to share more on that?
I think you don't. I think you don't slow growth because you're worried about the bit on the other side. You just start to build those teams, and I think at Wiz, for example, the way that at any company, right, the way that you build budget and plans for the previous year depends on the ARR and net retention rate that you've delivered the year before, and therefore, because of that, there's always going to be a gap. So if you have an incredible year, or you sell or land X number of net new logos, always the repercussion is going to be, right, do I have the CS team, the technical account management team that are going to be fully ramped, ready to go to look after those customers? And therefore, I personally think it stops with us. Everyone has to just like muck in, take on responsibility, and it might not be in your job description that you need to be doing a CS job for a bit, but we all need to do it. So that's a kind of average answer, I'd say, but there you go.
All good. There's a lot of leaders in the room, I believe, and I think hiring is tougher than ever as well, finding that top talent. So yeah, Natalie, kick off. Like, what do you look for in talent these days when you're hiring?
Yeah, so I sort of mentioned like this kind of obsession piece before, and I'm really kind of quite keen on that. And I think if I look at like our top sellers in the team right now, they are absolutely relentless. The things that they never stop doing is self-prospecting, is building out their territory, is working completely in partnership with their BDR, because if they are doing a great job together, that's going to help that top of the funnel piece and ensure we get the right quality coming into pipeline as well as all the other pieces, and trying to improve and get better and better and better all the time, and seeing every moment as a learning opportunity, and not just being like, I've been doing this for years, I know exactly what I need to do. And I think that when we look at the top guys we've got, that is really where they are just relentlessly focused in delivering. And it's we're in an interesting position, right? We're sort of creating a bit of a market, really. So the people that are being successful, for us, they're not coming from places where they've had big logos that they can rely on, or big sort of teams and lots of enablement and all the rest of it, because we're just not there yet, whilst we're building a name for ourselves, there's still a huge education piece that goes into what we're doing. So people who've had that sort of experience really do very, very well, because they understand how that translates through into what we're doing here. But yeah, it is just really that obsession, I think, and looking at it consistently as going, well, yeah, I've got my BDR, but the ones who are just continuing that motion themselves and always looking to learn and improve are the ones that have been the most successful for us.
Briefly on that, how do you test for that in the hiring process?
Yeah, so pretty much, helping us understand how they've done that before, right? Like, I pretty much say when I'm hiring, like, there's no BDRs, so what would you do? And then well, there is BDRs really, and here's your BDR when you join. But it's things like that of just trying to understand, like, how have you built for yourself, like what do you care about actually achieving, and are you coming to us for the right reasons? We're a startup with a decent amount of funding in London, doing AI. It's kind of a bit of a hype train. So it's really trying to sift through all of that and try and get to people's actual, like, where do they want to be, what do they care about, what kind of product do they actually want to be selling and representing, and trying to understand the kind of characteristics that they've got. We've got a 5-stage interview process, I think, at this point, if I recall correctly, including, sort of obviously screening internal recruiter, but also meeting the team, meeting the product team, and culminating with meeting our founder and CEO. Hopefully, if you got to that point, things are going to be okay. But we hear through the hiring process, people are like, I never really get to meet anybody who's already doing the job, and or I never get to meet the product team and like understand and hear from them about where the product's going and what's being successful. So we really want to just give a good flavour of what you can expect and what you're going to experience, because we're a very, very collaborative team, and it sounds really cliche to say it, but we are. We're not in the office every day with one another. We trust people to work in the way that they need to, but that collaboration is really, really apparent, and that's collaboration with the product team really heavily, obviously with the BDRs, with CS, like we've talked about, along with various other parts of the technical skill set as well. So, I think I've rabbited on and gone on a tangent, but you know what I mean.
And maybe from yourself.
Well, all of those things, for sure. I think we kind of have like a set of criteria that we use for hiring. I've actually used it across the 3 companies that I've been in previously to that. Like the first one, and I personally think the most important, is intelligence. And that's about testing people. How smart are they in the room? Intelligence is something, in my opinion, you can't teach someone. You either got it or you don't. And there's a number of very easy ways that when you get either a CV very early on, like how do people present themselves on paper, like that arguably is your most important document you'll ever create, right? It's the thing that gets you in a room. Has it got spelling mistakes on it? Has it got stupid errors? Does it match up to your LinkedIn profile? If it doesn't, then there's probably some other issues, right? Character is the second thing for me. It's about tenacity. Is this person going to do the things that other people are not going to do? The hard things, the graft that you turn up every day, are the things that you don't want to do, the cold calls, the pipeline generation, the stuff like that. And do they have the tenacity to stick around when times get tough? Because it's not always going to be easy. That's the nature of enterprise sales. The coachability piece, right? We're not all the finished article. I'm absolutely not. And so I'm looking for a team that I can learn around, be inspired about, that have creative ideas, different ways of doing things, like you mentioned. Like a sales process have to innovate every time, right? We are selling different products at every company that we go to. So how do we innovate on how we've sold before? Buyers are changing, AI is changing things. Like we really need to look at like new alternative ways. So that's cool. And then finally, track record is really important, especially in the business that I run. We're looking for people who are not necessarily it's circumstantial, right? Whether you work for a company that you can sell $1 million deal, because you are restricted by the product that you are selling or the price that people will pay for that product, right? So in the track record conversation, what I'm looking for is not necessarily have you done $1 million deal with HSBC, but it's like how complex is the sales cycle that you have run before? How multi-threaded has the deal that you've run been? Who did you have to meet from like an executive alignment perspective to get that deal over the line? And someone that talks with authority, clarity, stories, people, names, all of that gives us a really good indication of whether you have like a real grasp around your deal, and more importantly, whether you actually built that deal yourself. Because we all know people get lucky, but you're only as good as your last quarter. So like really digging into that.
Rob. In addition to a lot of those things, there's 2 other things I generally look for. One, entrepreneurial spirit. So I've actually have hired several failed entrepreneurs because they tend to make great salespeople and do whatever it takes, given that they've had that experience. So never sold before. Maybe have had a business that just didn't succeed for whatever reason. We've had actually great success in that area. The other thing is I generally would not hire a sales rep unless they've somehow throughout the process showed some form of vulnerability. And the reason why is I think vulnerability is what's going to create that human side of you to the buyer. And if you're willing to mask that through the entire sales process, then it's highly likely you will not necessarily come off as authentic as someone else. So that's something that we always test for.
Awesome. We're at time for the panel, so now we're going to open up to questions. So don't be shy, raise hands. Straight away at the back, go for it.
It's predominantly for Marina, just based on your experience and then where you are now. I'm just really curious how you're managing and the leaders that you put on. So how often, Wiz are a larger new company, how are you competing with different players? Are you working with partners? How are you getting into big accounts?
Yeah, so great question. So we're now at the maturity model where we have fixed patches. And therefore you need to work your patch, right? You don't really have a choice other than to create pipeline out of the territory that you've been given. So there is a massive focus. So the first thing is, as a rep, right, you have two jobs: pipeline generation and VO progression. VO progression meaning visible opportunity. Those are really the two things that you are hired to do in an organization, arguably other than the stuff that we've discussed today. We then, the way that we manage it on a quarterly basis, we have a set of targets for every single rep to achieve. And that is 10 new business meetings every quarter, booked and done, right? So if you book them with your BDR, amazing. If you source them through marketing, if you source them through an event, incredible. What we call a new business meeting is defined by someone with power and influence in the room and an identified problem that we believe that we can solve. So that's like the management bit. What was the second part of your question? Sorry.
I think I was more focused on how you get in there in the first place.
Oh, right, into the customers.
Yeah, so
sorry.
Again, kind of like a challenger ultimately, so a new company, but how are you getting to the CISO, to the CIO?
Great.
What levers are you pulling back?
So cold calls, I'm like the biggest fan of cold calls. Personally, I still do them, by the way, for my team as well. 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning, peak times, 12 till 1, and then we do 5:30 to 6:30. That's how to get the biggest bang for your buck, in my opinion, right? That's when, if I'm calling a CIO or a CISO for my team or anyone like that, those are when I make the calls. We are using creative ways to do pipeline generation as well. We have an amazing marketing team that make great swag. So we are sending swag to customers, and honestly, it has the most wild hit rate. She says with a water bottle that's not got her company name on it. I just looked at that. I was like, oh god. So we're sending a lot of swag. Then our BDRs are actually finding a huge amount of results in. When you call someone and you don't get hold of them because obviously they're busy normally. Hopefully, if you're calling someone of substance, they're normally busy anyway. Sending them a WhatsApp saying why you're calling and what your hypothesis is, that really works for us. And then also just making sure, obviously, that your WhatsApp photo is professional. I've seen a couple of people at festivals with glasses on. I'm like, oh, great. Just having a relentless focus on it and trying anything. But we block a full day, no meetings on a Monday, no customer meetings, no internal meetings, just pipeline generation. And every rep per quarter has to generate, if you're a majors rep, 2 million in pipe. Basically, your annual target in pipe every single quarter qualified. Does that answer? Sorry.
This came to me out.
I'll go first, you can go second. So the question, first of all, no action is because, in my opinion, the leading indicators that you could look at in order to judge whether there's going to be no action is who are you meeting in the organisation, and are they low level enough that they're just wasting your time? Because if they're spending time with you and there's not a problem to solve, they're probably not the kind of person that you want to engage with anyway. And in my view, you get stuck with the people that you sound like. So if you sound like you're solving a small problem, then it's likely that you are, and you'll get stuck with those people. Whereas if you understand, if you level up, and you actually go to a proper decision maker, the questions, the business conversation becomes a lot easier because you're speaking to a business person, right? So to answer your question directly, I would say after 2, or depending on what stage of the company that you work for is at, we do a lot of discovery because we can afford to do that because of the stage of where we are. But if you're in a smaller startup, and imagine 2 or 3 meetings, right? You could probably go back to that person if they're at the right level, and you could say, it's been great spending the last 3 calls with you. From my understanding, the 3 biggest problems that you have that we might be able to solve for you in your organization are X, Y, and Z. Do you think they're worth solving? First question, yes or no. And do you think they're worth solving now? That's what I would be asking, right? And then you've got a direct question that if they tell you yes, you say why? And then you start to understand what the actual implication of that problem is.
I'd be keen to understand where are you losing to no action in the process? Is it like you're holding a first demo and then they never respond, or is it that you're getting right up to sort of delivering a business case and then that falls flat? Like, where is it that you're seeing it?
So I have a lot of content around business outcomes, right? I find that since we came out of the COVID software boom, AEs are talking to people that just think about their team, they're not thinking about the company, right?
Okay.
So then the business case lands on the CFO, CEO's desk, and we're not talking the jargon,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about in all hands,
Yeah.
town halls, etc.
Yeah.
So I was keen to sort of see with you guys, how are you leveling up your discovery to make sure your reps are talking business outcomes,
Yeah.
OKRs,
Yeah.
and not just high level surface.
Yeah, so I think the real key for me there is it's the level within which you're obviously connecting, and you need to kind of get higher up to the people that actually care about the business and are going to be affected by the outcomes of the business versus their own personal metrics. You want to lean into that, but if they're not connecting, like you say, to then a business case landing out of nowhere on a CFO's desk, if they haven't been connected to that process at all, it's never going to happen. And like you said, if the value isn't resonating enough, then it's even worse, because it's not going to be connected to anything that the business actually cares about moving the needle on.
One question I would ask is, so any sort of champion can tell you any sort of problem they have. The follow-on question I would ask is, how does that roll up to one of the key company and or board objectives of your company? And if they can't answer that, then it's highly likely we'll not get C-level sign-off.
I think one of the other things is like a useful trick. If you can get right to the top by whoever your buyer is, CMO, CIO, CTO, and you have an initial demo with them and they say, oh wow, this is great. The question to find out who you should be spending your time with is to ask that person, who do you trust to go and fix this problem, right? And if you're in a room full of people, they'll give you the person that you actually are not going to waste time spending with.
We've got time for one more, Rob, but I think you've got to shoot. I want to be respectful of your
That's
time.
fine.
You sure? Cool.
Yeah.
One more. I think someone at the back, you had yours up first. There'll be time to ask afterwards, but yeah.
Sure. I wanted to ask about creating value. So when you create value, you only care about quantitative metrics. How do you go about building an ROI calculator? How do you go about building a value pyramid? How are you doing these things? What tools are you using? How are you making sure that's concrete so that the CFO is going to get it? When someone, your champion and the champions internally, they get it, it will make sense. How are you making sure that all makes common sense, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in first. We're utilising a tool that's helping us build out value hypothesis called Kavana. But aside of that, the key is to ensure, like we've just talked about here, that we're connected to metrics that are going to move the needle in the business. So for us, we're selling a platform that can help them win more work, win more business. So, what would it mean if they could win 5% more of the bids that they go in for? What does that actually realise back to them in terms of monetary value? And if the investment in us is less than 0.2% of what that total needle would, of 0.2% of the revenue that needle would move, then it's kind of a no-brainer. And we're building out the ROI and the value hypothesis to really lean into that. So our ROI is very simple. It's how many bids do you do? What's the average value of those bids? And if we could increase that bid win rate, and we use ranges as well, so like by 10, 15 or 25% at the best case, here's your outcomes of that. The value hypothesis that we build is then based much more on the efficiency gains that they can realise and the cost of inaction. So going back to that question there, the cost of doing nothing. If you don't do this, And if you don't implement this sort of technology, that 5% we've talked about, you've lost that. So what does that then relate down back into actual monetary, and now you're into minuses and losing negatively. So, we put a lot of emphasis on that, and that is building out literal, here's your challenges that you have, here's how we can solve for each of those, here's what that can spit out for you in terms of monetary ROI. That's not going to be enough, that's not going to convince your CFO, so here's the cost of inaction and the efficiency cost that is going to come to you. That might mean you can actually bid for more business, because now you're putting a tool inside your team, for us, now you're putting a tool inside your team that helps them bid at a 50% better efficiency rate. So now, those bids that you have to turn down because you don't have the resource to support, well, suddenly, 20% of those you can be doing. So again, back into ROI, here's what that's building. And as I mentioned before, 2-page business case, max. Here's what we understand about your business, here's the metrics we know you care about, here's the challenges we know you have, how we solve them, here's your ROI ranges, and then here's what the impact is going to be if you don't take any action. And that for us has just been really, really impactful to keep it very, very focused on win more business, gain more efficiency.
Briefly, just to add to that, is also just taking time to map out your value drivers. Like, what are they? What customer stories can you tie to each of them? What are the metrics that you can associate with them? Because quite often, if you're a platform or if you're multi-product, there's a lot of different metrics you can have impact on. And then, if someone's talking about just one, it doesn't feel very weighty. You need to challenge them and say, like, if we're going to move this up in the conversation internally, someone else is going to care about something bigger. Like how can we go beyond that? Because there's other things we can help you with. So actually having real clear visibility of what those are will help you then paint that picture. But I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add there.
I think the only thing I would add is, like, you can have the best business case in the world. If your champion cannot communicate it properly, then it will go nowhere. So, like, we tell our reps to make sure before their champions communicating a business, if they're not in the room, make sure to have actual practice run with them, play it back to me how you're going to basically present it. If they won't do that for you, they're probably not your champion, frankly.
Because my question about the value pyramid, so how does it get from the strategic goals of the organisation right down to that person? So I know that John McMahon wrote a book where you talk about it specifically in detail. I don't know if you had any examples of using that and how you build that. Maybe that's more for you, Marina, Wiz in particular, and Pat Dynamics.
So just repeat the second bit of the question.
So I was asking about value pyramids.
Right.
How you go about building them.
So, so as we don't have very long, so from an efficiency standpoint, get an annual report and put it through ChatGPT and find out IT initiatives, cyber initiatives, all of these things, right? Get a grip of what the overview of that company does and how it relates to the problems that you solve. Job boards are a great indicator of where companies are spending their money. Like, are they hiring developers? Are they hiring, are they hiring people in procurement? Whatever it is that your company actually does, figure out whether they are growing in that area in the business. Then it's really important that you don't just put a page, I'm laughing because this happened this morning, don't put a page of just information that you've learned about their company, because a value pyramid is about, first of all, it's a discovery tool to understand what more information can you draw out. Sometimes I even put mistakes on the value pyramid to be like, I got this, but I really don't think it's right. And everything that you put on that value pyramid, you should be able to solve those challenges for those people. So if they're investing in human resources by 30% in 2027, I mean, Wiz has absolutely nothing we can help with that. So it would never go on a value pyramid. So make sure it's relevant for the people in the room. And there's nothing wrong with a bit of red pen. Use it as a discovery tool. Introduce it properly. The reason you put a value pyramid up in front of people is to build credibility and do discovery. So this is my understanding of business. I absolutely do not work in your organisation, so I'm expecting this to be, wrong on many levels. But if you could just humour me and we could go through it together, which one's most important, blah, blah, blah.
Awesome. Sadly, we've got to wrap up there. I'm being given the eye. But yeah, thank you to our amazing panel today. A round of applause.
Should we also give up to see a good sponsor, Trumpet, as well, please?